Good afternoon. I'm Derek T. Dingle, Executive Vice President and Chief Content Officer of Black Enterprise, the #1 Black digital media brand with more than 9 million monthly unique visitors. We're so glad that you can join us for Black Men Excel. As part of our Professional Development Summit, it is vital for us to share how you can advance in sectors that continue to be underrepresented by Black men at the highest level. In this case, I'm talking about high finance and investing. That's why I'm so excited about today's session, Leadership Lessons from a Wall Street Powerhouse, in which I engage in a candid one-on-one conversation with Douglas McNeely, Managing Director and Head of Strategic Client Coverage for BlackRock. As a seasoned veteran for the world's largest money management firm with more than $9 trillion in assets under management, he joins us to share winning strategies on how Black professionals can gain access to the management track, avoid career derailing landmines, and make the transition from consumer to wealth builder. He is uniquely positioned to inspire you to follow his example to eventually attain corporate success. Now let's hear the leadership journey of one of the top revenue producers at BlackRock. Doug, thank you for joining us for the Black Men Excel Summit. We're very excited to have you here, and I'm thrilled to have this conversation.
Well, Derek, I'm thrilled as well, and thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to this for several weeks now since you made the original call to me, and I really appreciate you having me today.
Well, one of the reasons why I'm thrilled is that you are the Managing Director and Head of the Strategic Client Group for BlackRock. The world's largest asset management company with $9 trillion, that's with a T, under management. So my first question is, share with our audience your role at BlackRock, and what your day is like in terms of, engaged in the strategic client group.
Well, I appreciate that question. I guess I could best summarize it by saying that my team and I are responsible for literally the largest investors, some of the largest investors at BlackRock, primarily in the U.S. and Canada. So we work extensively with them as our investors look to invest in our various products around the world. So we work with them. I also have the privilege of serving on our operating committee here at the firm. I serve on several executive committees on the firm. I'm very involved in product creation through our alternative product committee here at the firm. I'm very involved in what we do on the human capital committee, so I help along with recruiting efforts and things of that nature. And I also help with what I'll say product innovation, client-led innovation. I'm very proud, as a matter of fact, of the fact that I'm one of the architects of one of our social impact efforts where we're investing in minority communities all over the United States, people of color, communities of color, where we're investing pretty large sums of capital in these areas as well. So I'm very proud of that effort also.
Yeah, that's you have a huge portfolio there. How do you manage from day to day, from month to month, how do you prioritize that expansive portfolio that impacts, millions of people within North America?
Well, look, part of the beauty of working at a place like this, we have a lot of resources. But I will tell you, I wouldn't be able to do it without a great team. I've been able to recruit a great team over the years. Proud to say we're probably one of the more diverse teams on Wall Street, which is something that we're very focused on, and I personally am very focused on. But it really starts and stops with that, Derek. I have a great team that helps me manage through quite a bit, and in the past few years, their responsibilities have grown quite a bit, and that's marked our growth as well as an organization. But I have a great team of people surrounding me, that's for sure.
Yeah. Before I talk about your career journey, I think there's a perfect time to talk about your team. This is about leadership. What has the last, couple of years been like operating with, under, the COVID-19 pandemic? How has that challenged or helped you stretch as a leader within the organization?
Well, there's been a lot, certainly with this period for everyone. I think, again, great team. You have to surround yourself with great people that share your ethos, that share your commitment to excellence and things of that nature. I mean, as much as COVID has shown us that we're all individuals here existing in this world, it also showed us that it's important to stay connected. And we've been very connected. We've used all modes of technology that you can imagine to work with each other and also engage our clients as well. But it's certainly taken quite a bit of effort. You want to challenge your own personal demons, if you will, and make sure that you're doing that, certainly. But also you want to make sure that you're paying very close attention to your team, their health from a mental health standpoint, from a connectivity standpoint, and just make sure that we're together more than anything else. As a leader, it's pretty important too. I think in this period, we've had to be very clear with our people in terms of what our objectives are, what our goals are, emphasizing staying connected with our clients, which is most important, making sure that that all of us, not only on my team, but our entire organization, is thinking about things in the right way and not forgetting what we're here for. And that's really, we represent, Derek, a number of people that don't have the resources that we have. We're here for our clients and for the firemen and the teachers and the garbage men, the city workers, everyone that's entrusted their capital to us to try to ensure that they can retire and exist in dignity and have the capital that it takes to continue to move their lives forward. And if you don't forget those things, I think you're going to be okay. You have to remember why we're here, and that's certainly part of the reason why we're here, for sure.
Well, it's interesting that during the pandemic, one of the greatest public health crises in our generation, probably within a century, it was a time where you could build enormous amounts of wealth, in terms of the market activity, in terms of, managing for your clients, and for Black enterprise, obviously, wealth building among African Americans is extremely important. Share with me your process of, handling clients, handling those individuals that rely on you for their retirement during this crisis. How did you keep them focused on, your strategy to help them build wealth, as a lot of people, flee the market because, at least in the beginning, because of volatility?
Well, that's a great question. I think, one thing that we've really done is remain focused on their priorities, not ours, right? I think that's the key thing. Whenever you're building these relationships, whenever you're building portfolios, it has to be on our client schedule. You have to keep their objectives in mind, not ours. So really, as you think about prioritizing what some of our activities have been, it's really been around that, really digging in and getting to know our clients, taking the time to understand what their objectives are, and then trying to direct our activities towards that goal. Of course, advising and helping them along the way, but certainly you can't forget about your clients' priorities, because that's, again, that's why we're here. If ever you start thinking inwardly and thinking about what our priorities are, what our objectives are, I think you lose. I think as long as you stay focused on what they're doing, I think that's where you begin to build very strong relationships, very strong partnerships. When people recognize that you're in there and you're taking their needs into consideration, not your own.
Yeah, well, this is one of the questions I've been chomping at the bit to ask you. Taking you back a bit, you were, you went to Duke. You were on a member of the Blue Devils basketball team. In fact, you were a member of the legendary Coach K's Blue Devils basketball team. Is that where you learned the fundamentals of teamwork, leadership? Share with us how that experience translated into your approach today in terms of managing and in terms of looking at challenges in the market, internally as well as externally.
Well, look, I've had the great privilege and certainly the experience. I've had leaders around me, Derek, all my life. I've been on great teams and been around great people all my life. I start with my mother and father. I start with my family. I start with so many other things that have contributed to my outlook and my focus on things. Focusing or you talk about Duke specifically, though. I'm proud of that experience too. I was actually Coach K's first recruit at Duke, which that dates me a little bit. That tells you I'm an old man at this point. But I was Coach K's first recruit at Duke, and there's so many positives about being involved in a program like Duke. But a couple things really stick out as I think about, as an adult, I think back at those times. A couple things probably stick out more than others. One, and it's not all the championships and things that Duke has won. I think it's sort of the foundational things which lead to winning and which lead to great teams and which lead to championships. One of the things that really comes to mind is, as I think about the Duke program, think about Coach K, he's always surrounded himself with great people for the most part, right? And I think that's so key. That's so important to building great teams and building great organizations, having great people around you that have their own point of view, but certainly share that common ethos of what's going to lead to success, right? And not being afraid to change. I think over the years, Coach K, depending on the teams that he has had, and he hasn't been afraid to change, given the talent that he had on that team. And I think that's important too. You have to evolve with time, But then the last thing, I think it goes into the ethos of champions, right? What makes you a champion? And I do recall, it was always said, what makes you a champion? And people think about that. And in the sports context, you say things like, pass the ball more and do those sorts of things. And that's all true. But I think true champions, if you look at them, whether it's Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods, whatever, in any walk of life you think about, there's one common characteristic, and that Kobe Bryant, right? There's one common characteristic, and that is you tell yourself the truth. True champions tell themselves the truth. In a sports context, you're always looking to improve. If you think about it, Tiger was always trying to adjust his swing. Michael always trying to adjust his jump shot, become better, and so on and so forth, always working harder than everyone else. In a business context, you tell yourself the truth as well. Are you really trying to become a master of your craft? Do you know the markets? Are you working harder to try to become better and more knowledgeable? Are you intellectually curious? Are you current? Are you reading? Are you doing the things that are necessary to make you a better professional and thereby help you to represent your clients in a much better way? Tell yourself the truth. If you're not doing that, only you know, right? We all wake up in the mirror and you look in that mirror, it's only you across the way looking at yourself. You know if you're working hard enough. And I think, that ethos of champions, telling yourself the truth, working harder, doing the things that you need to do to close the gaps in your approach. I think that those are some of the things that I remember about that experience.
Well, share with us how that foundation helped you when you first came onto the street. Got a BA in economics. Your first position was with the then legendary Donaldson Lieutenant Jenrette, and then you've worked for a myriad of companies that represent the best in finance, whether you're talking about Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley. But take us back to that young Doug McNeely, who first entered Wall Street. And as an African American, where there were very few of us on the street, and to some respects that hasn't changed greatly now. But how did you navigate the challenges as you matured as a financial professional, as one of the best and leading financial professionals on the street?
Well, look, I was determined. Look, you're right. When I first started, there were very few of us. In fact, I may have been one of the few in the building, right, when I started. And this is in the middle of New York City in the 80s. That was a long time ago, but I do recall saying to myself, without the benefit of a long history in this industry, I did have the opportunity to learn as much as I could, use this as a laboratory, leverage the resources that the firm at the time had to learn as much as I possibly could about my craft, right? Because without the benefit of anything else, one thing that can't be taken away from you is knowledge, is education. So I made up my mind I was going to do that. The other thing, and I won't go on too long about it because we could be here for a very long time, but the other thing that I did, and in some ways I was forced to do because there were so few of us, of people of color at that time, I had to open my mind and open my aperture to the fact that, you can receive great mentors, great mentorship from anyone. And I certainly try to remember that as I built relationships with people, right? I think some of the best mentors that I've had have not been people of color. Certainly I've had plenty of mentors that have been, but I think, then and even now, you have to open yourself up to the opportunity to engage with people that might be from a different background than you have, right? But that you can learn something from, that can be your advocate. And the last thing I'll say, look, you have to develop a thick skin, right? Because there are things that absolutely happen that you may not agree with, that you may want to react to. But at times you have to be smart and not react to it. Use it as fuel to try to accomplish going forward. And don't let things like that stop you, because there's always going to be obstacles presented by people, presented by situations, but you want to try to use those things as fuel, right? You want to try to use those things as fuel and don't let them derail what you're working towards, right? And that's a lengthy career, that's a lengthy career. And I don't define career as sort of one straight path. I mean, it may not be the Webster's dictionary definition, but when I think of career, it's a variety of experiences. It's a combination of experiences over a period of time, right? And you can't allow yourself to be derailed, right? And so I've tried to remember some of those things again then, but even now today, some of the conversations we're having today about race, about diversity, about certain things, Derek, we were having 30 years ago. Same conversation, almost the same to the letter, same conversation. And as much as that can be frustrating, you have to use that as an opportunity to try to push things forward.
Well, we have a number of young professionals out here. This conference is all about professional development, making sure that you can, navigate the landmines. And obviously, as Black professionals, as you brought up, you have to navigate that landmine of race. Can you share with us one of your experiences where you navigated that particular landmine, and how did you use that challenge as a lesson to even become more of a vital force within the industry?
Look, I've worked with people over time that clearly did not want me to be on Wall Street, clearly did not want me to be part of their team. You know, and that's difficult. That's difficult, especially when you're younger, right? I think when you're younger, it's very difficult. You don't have the perspective sometimes it's necessary to navigate around that stuff. But I can tell the people that are listening today that, you know what, have in mind that 24-hour rule, right? Don't react to things right away. Be thoughtful. Reach out to people that can be helpful to you.
It's hard to do.
And it's hard. It's very hard to do. It's absolutely hard to do because we know, these young men and young women out there are smart enough to know when obstacles, either real or not imagined, they're very real, are being placed in front of them. And I think, you have to be thoughtful, right? You have to navigate around. The other thing I've tried to do is make sure that people know what you're doing. Do it in a way that's practical and makes sense and certainly not egregious, but I think make sure that people know, even over and above some of the people that you're working with and working for, kind of have relationships built throughout the firm so they have an understanding of what you're doing as well. That way you do have some insulation around that. But again, it all goes back to knowing your craft, man. It all goes back to knowing your craft. And if you know that, there's a confidence that's built because of that, right? That you know that no matter what the obstacle is, you know what you're doing, right? And frankly, if you're not getting the opportunities where you are, then there are decisions that have to be made around that. But I would say, don't react right away. Be thoughtful. Reach out to people that can be helpful, even if they're not in your organization, by the way. That's another thing too. Have a broad set of relationships, even beyond your organization. Have a network of people that can help you through these things. These are some of the things that come to mind in terms of navigating through some of these obstacles.
One of the points that struck me when we were having our conversation, and it'll be one of many, I really enjoy your outlook, and I think it's going to be helpful, and I know it's helpful to our audience. But you said be an advocate for your career. As a young professional, how do you do that? How do you do that as you reach each leg of your career and effectively do it? Because there's people that advocate for their career and bring attention to themselves, but they don't get on the track to leadership, to senior management. How does one do that effectively? How did you do that effectively?
I think you do have to advocate for yourself, right? I think you have to go into each one of these situations, each segment of your career. Again, it's going to be an evolution. It's a career, a collection of experiences. So you're going to evolve, right? But I do think that you need to have some sense of what you want in that moment, right? In that moment, and then advocate for that. The nice thing about today, I think when you and I were starting off, I think we're about the same vintage, right? When you and I were starting off, man, we didn't have the benefit of all the information that these young people have today, right? They have the information, or it's accessible to them, right? So I think they, unlike when I was starting, when you were just you got in your job and you hoped and you prayed and you worked hard and hoped that someone would notice. I think nowadays people have a much clearer view of what's out there, what the opportunities are, what they want to do with their lives. I think the culture has shifted much more favorably in the direction of being an advocate for what you want, right? And I think now is the time, in particular, now is the time for young people to kind of, have a sense of what they want and go after it. But the other side of this is too, there's a balance. And I find that some young people make the mistake of advocating, but not having the foundation of success in what they had been doing. I think it makes it much easier to advocate and reach the goals that you've set out for if you've had that foundation of success. Like, work hard at what you're doing, right? Don't just move about just for the sense of moving about. Stick with something, work hard at it, build a foundation of success. And then I would imagine your advocacy, your career sort of advocacy, you're going to have much more success in reaching those goals, or at least setting a path in the direction of those goals, if you focused on being successful at what you're doing. I think
So
those pair it off.
are you saying don't advocate until you have, you've reached the level where you gain sponsorship, where people know your track record and can vouch for you, even people you don't even know within your organization that speak highly of your skills or your adroitness at putting together and managing deals or engaging in investing at the highest level?
No, I actually don't. I don't think you should wait.
Okay.
I think they're both joined, right?
Okay.
Look, all of us can recognize success. All of us can recognize successful habits. If I have a young person that's working with me and they are demonstrating those habits, right? They're working a little bit harder. When I ask them to do a project, they're right. If their name's on it, they care enough that, what they're giving me is right. What they're giving me is in effect a representation of themselves, right? Your hard work is a representation of yourself. I think that these are all things that you do to demonstrate that you're building the habits, that you're building the muscle memory to do well. So I don't think you need to wait. But you need to be doing those things at the same time. There's nothing wrong with sharing with people what your aspirations are. As you get a little bit older, the balance shifts a little bit. I think you get a little louder on the aspiration side, because you have more experience, you've shown more evidence of success. So I think you can be louder. But I don't think you need to wait. Even at the onset of your career, I really don't think there's anything wrong with young people saying, hey, this is what I think I want to do. How can I get there? And if you're associating yourself with the proper mentor, that mentor will understand it, they'll encourage it, and they will help you get there. Even if that means telling you the truth, which says you're not doing X, Y, or Z. And people have to, again, back into that ethos of champions that I spoke about earlier, be accepting of that, right? And try to address X, Y, and Z and improve and be better, and then you can move on in your career.
Yeah. So, gain the fundamentals, be proficient at your task, gain the mentorship, and then position yourself for the sponsorship that helps ultimately build, careers. Share with me this. This is, when I looked at your background and Doug, you've operated kind of under the radar. This is like almost the debut at Black Enterprise. But you have been at some of the leading financial services companies, but you also decided to take a detour into entrepreneurship. Share with me that experience and how that helped build your leadership skills, helped you, gain some muscles that you wouldn't ordinarily have gained as just working strictly in the corporate environment, but being at the helm of your organization. What did that do for you as you moved up within your career?
Well, I'll tell you, I truly believe everyone should have an entrepreneurial experience. Everyone. Start a business, do whatever, because I think you become invested. You really understand what it is to be out on your own and not be in sort of the warm confines of these large organizations, which is nice too. I'm not being critical if someone chooses just that path. But I think when you start, and I started my business after leaving Goldman Sachs, and I was determined to build a business. My team and I did it for 3.5 years. We did it very successfully for a couple of those years, and in 1 year it wasn't as successful, and we had to make the decision to literally shutter the company. And then I'm glad to say that we responded and we were able to return the capital to our investors, and they were at a gain, which I was very proud of. So, but it was a great experience for so many reasons, Derek. And a couple of those reasons are, look, I think when you're in these large corporations, sometimes you forget you have a bunch of you have colleagues with you, but when you're in your own company and you're 8 to 10 or whatever number of people, leading those kinds of companies takes on an enormous amount of responsibility, right? In a much different way than if people work for you in a large organization. I think in this context, in a large organization, you still care about the people, right? But you feel it in a very real way when you're in your own organization, when you're having your own entrepreneurial experience. It's not just that person. You very much think about every day beyond that person. You think about their families, their livelihoods, things of that nature. It's a really odd thing. I think it's just an incredible amount of responsibility that you feel. It's also, though, an incredible amount of excitement when you're able to attract that investor, or when you're able to create a product that other people believe in as well. That's an incredible feeling, because you know what? It's not, whether it's a large organization on your business card, it's really the strength of your ideas. And when you're able to capture that feeling, that's a hell of a feeling, right? When somebody's investing with you based on the power of your ideas, not because of the name of that's on the business card, that's a heck of a feeling. And that's one that I will never forget. And that's what keeps you going. It definitely keeps you going.
Well, it goes back to something else that you said, that you should recognize your victories and achievements along the way, and don't wait until you reach your so-called destination before you celebrate what you've achieved.
I think that's right. I think that all of us get caught up into that, right? We have a goal in mind. We're all hoping to have lengthy careers, and as such, you set lofty goals for yourself. But there is a life that's being built along with that, whether it's with your family, with your friends, even on your own, and what you're trying to achieve on your own. You know what? There's a lot of hard work that goes into these things, and I do think along the way you have to take a step back and say, "Wow, look at how far I've gone." And then in our case, you have to take an additional step back and say, you know what? There are so many people that contributed so much, that sacrificed so much, so I can be here today. And I think we need to remember that, right? There's so many people in our history, in our proud history as African Americans in this country, and as Black people around the world, so many people sacrifice, in some cases with their blood, with their lives, for us to be here. And I think these are things you cannot forget, right? You cannot forget. I think that you need to take a step back and remember those kinds of things, for sure.
Doug, I'm getting the sign for to wrap. This has been a great conversation. It's been too short, so we must have a sequel. But before I leave, or before we leave, and finish up this conversation, is there any last bits of advice or a couple of takeaways that you want to share with our audience? You gave such great advice, but is there some other nuggets that you can share with our audience?
Well, before I go there, I want to thank you for the opportunity, Derek, to speak to your audience and to speak to you. You all at Black Enterprise have done such an incredible job over the years of making sure that people like me and young people that aren't even in this business yet have a path, to have aspirations, to see that there are those of us that are out here pushing and trying and doing well. So I really want to thank you, because I've been a reader for years. I've been quiet, but I've been an advocate and a reader for years. Look, if you ask me for any last minute advice, I would just say, don't forget where you come from, but also have a clear eye in terms of where you want to go. And sometimes those things aren't aligned. And just keep working hard, reach out, make sure that you're building the types of relationships and networks that are going to help you be successful, both in business and also just with your own aspirations from a life perspective. I think you want to surround yourself with great people, right? And that is what's going to drive your success, right? The other thing I would say in closing is invest, right? Invest. Oftentimes, with respect to us, I think we're socialized into being consumers, oftentimes, right? Whether it's the shoes that we're buying or the clothes that we're buying, things like that. You know what? Many times at the foundation of many of these things are public companies that if we're buying the stuff, probably other people are buying the stuff and all that. So instead of being a consumer part of our economy, I would love for our people to be investors. And it could be a little bit of capital, it could be a lot of capital, but invest. Don't just consume. I think that's important. And that's going to mark, the advancement of our people in this society, as we invest and as we can attract more capital and understand what it is to invest and be capital providers as opposed to capital seekers. That's going to be really the foundation of our continued success and growth in our society, in our economy. So I would say that is sort of a last bit of advice for you.
This has been great. With that, I'd like to thank you for being a part of the Black Enterprise Black Men Excel Summit and sharing your lessons of leadership. And we will talk again. We will talk again and share your insights and your stories with our audience. Once again, thank you for being here.
Thanks, Derek. I appreciate it. Thank you.